When 7-year-old Mia Chen got lost in the vast Olympic National Park during a family camping trip, everyone expected the worst. The Pacific Northwest wilderness is unforgiving. Towering trees, rushing rivers, and dangerous wildlife make it deadly for even experienced hikers. But Mia wasn't truly alone. Her golden Labrador, Rusty, stayed by her side as temperatures dropped, and black bears prowled through the darkness. For 3 terrifying days, this remarkable dog found food, water, and shelter while keeping his little girl safe from predators that could have killed them both. The search teams called it a miracle when they found Mia healthy and unharmed. The dog's survival instincts were incredible, they said, almost supernatural. They had no idea how right they were. Because the truth about Rusty, and why he was so determined to protect Mia, was more impossible and beautiful than anyone could imagine. The real story would only be revealed when a 7-year-old girl discovered a decade-old secret hidden deep in the mountains, where love proved stronger than death itself. This is that story. Mia Chen pressed her nose against the truck window as her dad turned onto the gravel road leading into Olympic National Park. The trees were so tall, they seemed to touch the clouds. She had never seen anything like them. "Look, Rusty!" she called to the golden Labrador sitting beside her. "Look how big those trees are!" Rusty's tail wagged as he looked out the window. His brown eyes sparkled with excitement. The big dog loved car rides, especially when they led to new places to explore. "Those are Douglas fir trees," Dad said from the front seat. "Some of them are over 200 years old. They were growing here before your great-great-grandmother was even born." Mia's eyes grew wide. She was only 7 years old, and 200 years seemed like forever. She tried to imagine what the world looked like when the trees were babies. David Chen smiled at his daughter in the rearview mirror. He had been planning this camping trip for months. As a park ranger, he spent a lot of time in the forest, but this was different. This was special time with just him and Mia. And Rusty, of course. "Are we almost there, Dad?" Mia asked for the 10th time that morning. "Almost, sweetheart. See that sign up ahead? That's the Ho River Trail parking area. Our campsite is just past there." The truck bounced over rocks and potholes as they drove deeper into the temperate rainforest. Mia had learned that word from her dad. Temperate meant not too hot and not too cold. Rainforest meant it rained a lot, over 140 inches every year. "That's more rain than I am tall," Mia had said when Dad first told her. "Much more," Dad had laughed. "You'd need to stack 5 of you on top of each other to equal all that rain." Now, on this beautiful Friday morning in September, the sun was shining through the green canopy above them. It was September 15th, 2023, and the weather was perfect for camping. They pulled into their campsite near the Ho River. Mia could hear water running over rocks somewhere nearby. The sound was peaceful and exciting at the same time. "This is it," Dad said, turning off the truck. "Our home for the weekend." Mia jumped out of the truck before Dad could even unbuckle his seatbelt. Rusty bounded after her, immediately starting to sniff everything in sight. The forest smelled like pine needles, wet earth, and something clean and fresh that Mia couldn't name. "Wow," she whispered, turning in a slow circle. Everywhere she looked, there were huge trees covered in green moss. Ferns grew as tall as she was. Everything looked magical, like a fairy tale forest. "Pretty amazing, isn't it?" Dad said, lifting their tent bag from the truck bed. "This forest gets so much rain that moss and ferns can grow right on the tree trunks. It's like a jungle, but cooler." Mia ran to the biggest tree she could find and tried to wrap her arms around it. Her fingertips didn't even come close to meeting on the other side. "Dad, this tree is huge. How many kids would it take to hug it?" David walked over and looked up at the massive Douglas fir. "Probably about 8 kids holding hands could circle this one. Maybe 10. Can we measure it?" "We sure can. But first, let's set up camp. Then we'll have all weekend to explore." Setting up the tent was harder than it looked in the store. The poles kept falling over, and Mia got tangled in the rainfly. But Dad was patient, showing her how each piece worked. "Camping is about learning new things," he said, as they struggled with the tent stakes. "And making mistakes is part of learning." Rusty helped by carrying tent stakes in his mouth, his tail wagging the whole time. Sometimes he got confused and brought Dad a stick instead of a stake, but nobody minded. "Good boy, Rusty," Mia giggled as the dog dropped a pine cone at her feet. "That's not exactly what we need, but thanks anyway." Once the tent was up, Dad showed Mia how to organize their campsite. Food went in the bear box, a metal container that bears couldn't open. Clothes and sleeping bags went in the tent. Everything else had a special place. "Why do we have to put food in that box?" Mia asked. "Because black bears live in this forest," Dad explained. "They have incredible noses, much better than Rusty's even. They can smell food from miles away." Mia looked around nervously. "Will we see any bears?" "Probably not. Bears usually stay away from people. But if we do see one, we know what to do, right?" Mia nodded. Dad had taught her about bear safety before they left home. "Don't run. Make yourself look big. Back away, slowly, and yell really loud." "That's right, and Rusty will help keep us safe too." As if he understood, Rusty came over and sat beside Mia, his warm body pressed against her leg. She felt braver with her dog nearby. After setting up camp, Dad pulled out a compass and a whistle from his pack. "Time for your first wilderness lesson," he said. "These might be the most important things you learn this weekend." He showed Mia how to read the compass, how the needle always pointed north. He taught her about landmarks, big rocks, unusual trees, stream crossings, things that could help her find her way. "And this whistle," he said, hanging it around her neck on a bright orange cord, "is for emergencies only. 3 short blasts mean I need help. Can you remember that?" 3 short blasts, Mia repeated, holding the whistle carefully. "But I won't need it, right? Because I'll stay with you." "Of course you will. But it's good to be prepared." The afternoon flew by as they explored near their campsite. Mia learned to identify different trees. Douglas fir had thick, rough bark and cones that looked like mouse feet sticking out. Western hemlock had small, flat needles and tiny cones. Sitka spruce had sharp needles that hurt if you grabbed them wrong. "How do you remember all this stuff, Dad?" Mia asked as they walked along a small trail. "Practice," Dad said. "And because it's my job. But mostly because I love it. When you love something, it's easier to remember." Mia thought about that. She loved horses and could name every breed she'd ever seen in books. Maybe learning about trees would be the same way. They found the stream that made the peaceful running water sound. It was the Hoh River, Dad explained, fed by glaciers high up in the Olympic Mountains. The water was so clear Mia could see rocks on the bottom. "Can we swim?" she asked. "Too cold," Dad said, dipping his hand in the water. "This water comes from melted snow and ice, but you can wade in the shallow parts if you want." Mia took off her shoes and stepped carefully into the stream. The water was shockingly cold, but it felt good on her feet after walking around the campsite. Rusty waded in beside her, lapping at the clear water. "This is the best day ever," Mia declared, splashing gently so she wouldn't scare any fish. The sun began to set through the trees. They returned to camp to make dinner. Dad showed Mia how to build a safe campfire, how to arrange the rocks and clear away dry leaves. Soon, they had a cheerful fire crackling in their fire ring. "Hot dogs first, then s'mores," Dad announced, pulling packages from their cooler. They roasted hot dogs on long sticks, and Mia only dropped hers in the fire once. Rusty got the burned hot dog, which he seemed to think was a wonderful treat. "Tell me about Mom," Mia said as they ate. She always asked this when it was just her and Dad. The stories made her feel closer to the mother she barely remembered. Dad was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. "Your mom would have loved this place," he finally said. "She loved the outdoors as much as I do, maybe more." What was her favorite thing to do outside? Hiking. She could walk for hours and never get tired. And she was amazing with animals. She had a way of making them trust her, even wild ones. Mia looked at Rusty, who was lying peacefully by the fire. "Is that why Rusty is so good? Because he remembers Mom?" Dad's expression grew soft and sad. "Maybe. Rusty has always been special. He came to us right when we needed him most." After hot dogs came the s'mores. Marshmallows roasted until they were golden brown, squished between graham crackers with chocolate. Mia's first attempt resulted in a marshmallow that caught fire and had to be blown out. Her second try was perfect. "Here, Rusty," she said, breaking off a piece of graham cracker. "You should try s'mores, too." "Not the chocolate," Dad warned. "Chocolate isn't good for dogs, but he can have some marshmallow and cracker." Rusty accepted his treat politely, his tail thumping against the ground. He seemed to understand that this was a special occasion. As the fire burned lower, Dad told stories about his work as a park ranger. He told Mia about the time he helped rescue a lost hiker, about the family of deer that visited his office every morning, about the eagle's nest he'd been watching for 3 years. "Do you ever get scared in the forest?" Mia asked. "Sometimes," Dad admitted, "but being scared isn't always bad. It keeps you alert and careful, and I'm never really alone. Nature is full of friends if you know how to look for them." The stars came out as they talked, more stars than Mia had ever seen in town. The forest sounds were different at night. Owls hooting, small animals rustling in the bushes, the constant gentle sound of the river. "Time for bed, camping girl," Dad said. As Mia yawned, they brushed their teeth with water from their bottles and used the camp bathroom. In the tent, Mia snuggled into her sleeping bag with Rusty curled up beside her. Dad was in his own sleeping bag on the other side of their small tent. "Dad?" Mia whispered in the darkness. "Yes, sweetheart? This really is the best day ever. Thank you for bringing me here. Thank you for coming with me. Sweet dreams, Mia." "Sweet dreams, Dad. Sweet dreams, Rusty." Rusty's tail thumped once against the tent floor, and then he settled with a contented sigh. Mia fell asleep, listening to the river and feeling safer than she had ever felt in her life. She had no way of knowing that by tomorrow night, everything would change. Outside their tent, the forest settled into its nighttime rhythm. In the darkness, something moved through the trees, not threatening, just watching, keeping guard, as if the forest itself wanted to protect the sleeping family and their faithful dog. The last thing Mia remembered before sleep took her was Rusty's warm breathing beside her and the sound of her dad's gentle snoring. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new lessons, and new discoveries. She couldn't wait. But when Mia woke up Saturday morning, something was wrong. The tent felt cold and damp. Outside, she could hear nothing. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering. Even the river seemed quieter. "Dad?" she whispered. A groan came from the other side of the tent. Dad was still in his sleeping bag, but he sounded sick. "Dad? Are you okay?" Mia crawled over to him, Rusty following close behind. David Chen's face was pale and covered in sweat. His forehead felt hot when Mia touched it. "I don't feel very good, sweetheart," he said weakly. "My stomach hurts, and I'm really hot." Mia had never seen her strong dad look so sick. It scared her. "What's wrong? What can I do?" Just give me a minute," Dad said, trying to sit up. But he fell back down with another groan. "Maybe I ate something bad." Rusty whined softly and nudged Dad's hand with his nose. Even the IC dog could tell something was wrong. "I need to call for help," Dad said, reaching for his radio with shaking hands. The radio was part of his ranger equipment. He always carried it when they went into the wilderness. Dad pressed the button and spoke into the radio. "This is Ranger David Chen, requesting assistance at Ho River Campsite 12. I have a medical emergency." Static crackled from the radio. Then more static. "Hello? This is Ranger Chen. Can anyone hear me?" Nothing but static. Dad tried different channels, but the radio just made crackling sounds. The thick forest and tall mountains made it hard for radio signals to get through. "The fog," Dad whispered, looking toward the tent door. "It's probably the fog." Mia unzipped the tent door and gasped. She couldn't see anything. Thick gray fog surrounded their campsite like a wall. She could barely see the fire ring just a few feet away. "Wow," she breathed. "Where did all this fog come from?" "The ocean," Dad explained weakly. "Pacific fog rolls in sometimes. It'll burn off when the sun gets higher, but..." He tried to sit up again and couldn't. "I really don't feel good, Mia." Mia felt scared, but she tried to be brave like Dad had taught her. "What should I do?" "Stay close to camp. Don't go anywhere I can't see you. The fog makes it easy to get lost." But Dad's eyes were closing. The fever was making him very sleepy. Mia looked around their campsite. In the thick fog, even familiar things looked strange and scary. The trees were just dark shapes. She couldn't see the stream at all, even though she could still hear it. Rusty stayed close to her, pressing against her legs. His fur felt warm and comforting. "I should help Dad," Mia said to Rusty. "Maybe I can build up the fire. That might help him feel warmer." She had watched Dad build the fire last night, but doing it herself was harder. The fog had made everything damp. The matches kept going out before she could light the kindling. "I need dry wood," she told Rusty. "Maybe there's some under those big trees where the fog can't reach." Dad had said to stay close, and Mia planned to. She would just go a little way into the forest to find dry branches. The fog was so thick she could only see about 3 feet in front of her, but she would be very careful. "Come on, Rusty, help me find good firewood." Rusty whined and looked back toward the tent where Dad was sleeping. Then he looked at Mia, as if he didn't want to leave her alone, but didn't want to leave Dad either. "It's okay, boy. We'll be right back." They walked slowly into the fog. Mia kept one hand on Rusty's back so she wouldn't lose him. Everything looked the same, gray and misty and strange. "Here's some wood," Mia said, picking up a fallen branch. It felt dry underneath, even though the top was wet from fog. This should work. She gathered several pieces, trying to remember which direction they had come from. But, in the fog, Every direction looked the same. "Okay, Rusty, let's go back." But when they turned around, Mia couldn't see their tent, or the fire ring, or anything that looked familiar. "Dad," she called. Her voice sounded muffled in the thick fog. No answer. "Dad!" she called louder. Still nothing. Rusty whined and pulled gently on her jacket sleeve with his teeth. He wanted to go in a different direction. "Are you sure, Rusty? I think camp is this way." But after walking for what felt like a long time, they still hadn't found their campsite. The fog seemed to swallow up everything. Mia couldn't even tell if they were walking in a straight line or in circles. "Dad!" she yelled as loud as she could. "Dad, where are you?" Her voice echoed strangely in the fog, but no one answered. Panic started to build in Mia's chest. Her heart beat faster, and her hands started to shake. The firewood she had been carrying fell to the ground with soft thuds. "I'm lost," she whispered to Rusty. "We're lost." Rusty sat down beside her and pressed his warm body against her legs. His brown eyes looked up at her calmly, as if he was trying to tell her everything would be okay. But Mia didn't feel okay. She felt scared and small and very alone. She tried to remember what Dad had taught her about getting lost. "Stay in one place," she said out loud, trying to remember his exact words. "If you're lost, stay where you are, so people can find you." But she didn't know where she was, and she had been walking for so long, trying to find camp, that she had no idea which direction she had come from. The fog played tricks on her eyes. Sometimes she thought she saw their tent, but when she walked toward it, it turned out to be just a big rock or a fallen log. Every tree looked the same. Every direction looked the same. Mia sat down on what felt like a soft pile of fallen leaves. Rusty immediately lay down beside her, putting his head on her lap. "What are we going to do, Rusty?" she asked, stroking his golden fur. "I can't find Dad. I can't find our camp. I don't even know which way the river is anymore." Rusty whined softly and licked her hand. Mia tried not to cry, but tears started anyway. She was only 7 years old, and the forest felt huge and scary in the fog. What if Dad was getting sicker? What if he needed help and couldn't find her? What if she never found her way back? "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered into the gray mist. "I'm sorry I left camp. I just wanted to help." The fog seemed to make everything quiet and muffled. Even normal forest sounds were hard to hear. Mia felt like she and Rusty were the only living things in the whole world. Time passed. She didn't know how much. The fog stayed thick and gray. Her clothes felt damp and cold. She shivered and wished she had brought her jacket. Then, slowly, the fog began to change. It didn't disappear all at once, but it started to get a little brighter. Mia could see further than before, maybe 10 feet instead of 3. "Look, Rusty, the fog is lifting." As the morning sun climbed higher, the fog gradually began to thin. Mia could start to see the shapes of trees more clearly. She could see ferns and moss-covered logs, but nothing looked familiar. When the fog finally lifted enough for her to see the forest around her, Mia's heart sank. She was in a part of the woods she had never seen before. Tall trees surrounded her on all sides. No tent, no fire ring, no Dad. She stood up and turned in a slow circle, looking for anything she recognized. But every direction looked the same. Just trees and more trees. "Dad!" she called again, but her voice seemed tiny in the huge forest. Rusty stood up too and sniffed the air carefully. His ears were pointed forward, listening for sounds Mia couldn't hear. He looked alert and serious, not playful, like he usually was. "Do you know which way to go, boy?" Rusty looked at her with his intelligent brown eyes, then looked in different directions. He seemed as confused as she was. Mia remembered the whistle around her neck, the one Dad had given her for emergencies. This was definitely an emergency. She lifted the whistle to her lips and blew 3 short blasts, just like Dad had taught her. The sound was sharp and loud in the quiet forest. She waited, listening for an answer. Nothing. She tried again. 3 short blasts. Then she listened with all her might. Still nothing. "Maybe Dad can't hear me because he's too sick," she said to Rusty. "Or maybe I'm too far away." The sun was getting higher, and Mia could feel it warming her face through the trees. But she was still cold, still scared, and still very lost. She sat back down on the soft pile of leaves, and Rusty curled up beside her. His warm body helped her feel a little less afraid. "What are we going to do now, Rusty?" As if he understood her question, Rusty stood up and walked a few steps away from her. Then he stopped and looked back, his tail wagging slightly. "Do you want me to follow you?" Rusty took a few more steps, then stopped and looked back again. Mia didn't know what else to do. Maybe Rusty could smell their campsite. Maybe he could find the way back to Dad. "Okay, boy, lead the way." She stood up and followed Rusty into the forest, hoping with all her heart that her dog knew something she didn't. Behind them, the last of the morning fog disappeared into the warming air, leaving no trace that it had ever been there at all. For the next hour, Mia followed Rusty through the thick forest. He seemed to know where he was going, stopping to sniff the air and listen carefully before choosing which direction to take. But nothing looked familiar to Mia. "Are we getting close, Rusty?" she asked hopefully. Rusty's ears twitched, but he kept walking. His tail wasn't wagging anymore. Something about his body language made Mia feel worried. They walked past huge fallen logs covered in bright green moss. They stepped over small streams that bubbled down from the mountains. They pushed through ferns that grew taller than Mia's head. But still, no sign of their campsite. The sun climbed higher in the sky. Mia's stomach started to growl. She had been so worried about Dad that she hadn't eaten breakfast. Now she was getting hungry and thirsty. "I'm getting tired, Rusty," she said, sitting down on a mossy log. "Can we rest for a minute?" Rusty came back to her immediately, pressing his warm body against her side. He looked up at her with his brown eyes, and Mia could see worry there. "You don't know where we are either, do you?" she whispered, as if to answer her. Rusty whined softly and licked her hand. The truth hit Mia like a cold wave. They weren't just lost for a little while. They were really, truly lost. And Dad was sick back at camp, probably wondering where she was. "Maybe someone will find us," she said, trying to sound brave. "Dad will call for help when he feels better. Park rangers will come looking." But even as she said it, Mia remembered how Dad's radio hadn't worked. And the forest was so big. How would anyone know where to look? She heard water nearby, a gentle bubbling sound. "I'm thirsty, Rusty. Let's find that stream." They pushed through some bushes and found a small creek with clear, cold water running over smooth rocks. Mia cupped her hands and drank. The water tasted clean and fresh, much better than the water bottles at camp. Rusty drank too, lapping at the stream with his pink tongue. Then he sat down and looked around, his ears moving as he listened to forest sounds. "What is it, boy? Do you hear something?" But Rusty just whined again, that worried sound he'd been making all morning. As the afternoon wore on, Mia realized they needed to find a safe place to spend the night. Dad had taught her about wilderness survival, even though she never thought she'd need to use it. "We need shelter," she told Rusty, "and we should stay near water." They found a small clearing beside the stream. Tall trees surrounded it on 3 sides, and a large boulder provided some protection from the wind. It seemed like a good spot. "Okay, Rusty, help me build a shelter." Mia had watched Dad make shelters before, but doing it herself was much harder. She gathered fallen branches and tried to lean them against the big boulder. Most of them fell down. "This is harder than it looks," she panted, dragging a branch that was almost as long as she was tall. Rusty surprised her by picking up a smaller branch in his mouth and bringing it to her. His tail wagged slightly, as if he was proud to help. "Good. Boy, bring me more sticks like that one." Working together, they managed to build a small lean-to shelter against the boulder. It wasn't very pretty, but it would keep some of the wind and rain off them. As the sun started to set through the trees, Mia's stomach growled loudly. She was hungrier than she had ever been in her life. "I wish I had some of those s'mores from last night," she said sadly. Rusty's ears perked up. He trotted away from their shelter and came back a few minutes later with something in his mouth. When he dropped it at Mia's feet, she saw it was a cluster of dark blue berries still attached to their branch. "Berries! Are these safe to eat?" Dad had taught her about huckleberries. They grew wild in the Olympic forests and were safe for people to eat. These looked like the pictures in Dad's nature books. Mia ate the berries carefully. They were tart and sweet at the same time, and they helped her hungry stomach feel a little better. "Thank you, Rusty. How did you know I was hungry?" But Rusty was acting strange again. He kept looking around the clearing, sniffing the air, and making that worried whining sound. His fur along his back stood up slightly. "What's wrong, boy?" The inthe forest was getting darker as the sun set. New sounds started: owls hooting, branches creaking in the wind, and small animals rustling in the bushes. Mia had thought these sounds were peaceful when she was safe in the tent with Dad. Now they seemed scary. She crawled into their little shelter and pulled Rusty close to her. His warm fur felt good against her cold hands. "I'm scared, Rusty," she whispered. "What if Dad is really sick? What if no one finds us? What if—" A branch cracked loudly somewhere in the darkness outside their clearing. Mia held her breath and listened. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then she heard it. Something big moving through the bushes. Something much bigger than a squirrel or a raccoon. Rusty heard it too. He lifted his head and growled, a low, deep sound that Mia had never heard him make before. It wasn't the playful growl he made when they played tug-of-war with his rope toy. This was serious. This was a warning. "What is it, Rusty?" Mia whispered, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The sounds in the bushes got closer. Whatever was out there was big and moving slowly, carefully. Mia pressed herself against the back of their shelter and held onto Rusty's collar. Then she saw them. 2 glowing yellow-green eyes reflecting the moonlight. About 30 feet away, just at the edge of their clearing, a large black shape stood perfectly still. A bear. Mia had seen bears in pictures and at the zoo, but this was different. This bear was wild and free, and much bigger than she had imagined. Even sitting on all 4 legs, it was almost as tall as she was. The bear sniffed the air, trying to figure out what these strange visitors were doing in its forest. Its nose was working like Rusty's did, but much more slowly and carefully. Rusty stood up, his fur now standing straight up all along his back and neck. He moved to place himself between Mia and the bear. His growl got deeper and more serious. "Good boy," Mia whispered, remembering what Dad had taught her about bears. "Don't run. Stay calm." Back away slowly. But there was nowhere to back away to. They were in their shelter against the boulder. The bear took a step into their clearing, then another step. It was curious about them, but not afraid. In the moonlight, Mia could see how massive it was. Its paws were bigger than dinner plates. Rusty's growl changed to a bark. Not a happy, playful bark, but a sharp warning bark that echoed through the forest. "Stay away," the bark seemed to say. "These are my people." The bear stopped and tilted its head, studying this brave dog who dared to challenge something so much bigger. For what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, dog and bear stared at each other. Mia could barely breathe. She had never been so scared in her entire life. Then Rusty did something amazing. He barked once more, loud, sharp, and confident. It was the bark of a dog who would fight to protect his family, no matter how big the enemy was. The bear seemed to understand. It looked at Rusty for another long moment, then at Mia, cowering in the shelter. Slowly, the big animal turned and walked back into the forest. Within seconds, it had disappeared completely, as if it had never been there at all. Rusty didn't relax until the sounds of the bear moving through the forest had faded completely. Only then did he lie down beside Mia, but he kept his ears up, listening for any sign that the bear might come back. "Oh, Rusty," Mia sobbed, throwing her arms around his neck. "You saved me. You were so brave." Rusty licked her face gently, but his eyes stayed alert, watching the dark forest around them. Mia curled up against Rusty's warm side, shivering from cold and leftover fear. Above them, stars appeared between the tree branches, more stars than she had ever seen before. The forest sounds continued around them, but somehow they seemed less scary now. Rusty was protecting her. "Thank you," she whispered into his fur. "Thank you for keeping me safe." Rusty's tail thumped once against the ground, but he didn't take his eyes off the forest. All night long, he stayed awake, listening and watching, making sure nothing would hurt his little girl. Mia fell asleep with her hand buried in Rusty's golden fur, not knowing that somewhere far away, her dad was crying and calling her name into his radio, begging someone, anyone, to help him find his lost daughter. In the morning, the search would begin. But tonight, it was just a little girl and her brave dog, alone in the vast wilderness, learning that sometimes the best protection comes from the love of a loyal friend. Sunday morning brought panic to Olympic National Park. David Chen had woken up feeling slightly better. But when he called for Mia, only silence answered him. The tent was empty except for her sleeping bag, still warm but abandoned. "Mia!" he shouted, stumbling out of the tent on shaky legs. His fever had broken during the night, but he still felt weak and dizzy. "Mia, where are you?" He searched their campsite frantically. The fire was cold ashes. Her shoes were gone, but her jacket hung on a tree branch where she had left it the night before. The bear box was still locked tight. David's hands shook as he grabbed his radio. This time, the morning air was clear, and his signal came through. "Emergency dispatch. This is Ranger David Chen at Ho River Campsite 12. I need immediate assistance. My 7-year-old daughter is missing." The response came quickly. "Copy that, Ranger Chen. How long has she been missing?" David looked at his watch. It was 8:30 in the morning. When had he last seen Mia? Yesterday morning, when the fog rolled in. Since yesterday morning, at least 18 hours. "We're sending search and rescue immediately. Stay at your location." Within 2 hours, the forest around their campsite buzzed with activity. Captain Sarah Martinez arrived first, leading a team of 6 experienced search and rescue volunteers from Jefferson County. She had been doing this job for 15 years and had found dozens of lost hikers, but lost children always made her heart race faster. "Tell me exactly what happened," Captain Martinez said, kneeling beside David at the picnic table. A paramedic was checking David's temperature and blood pressure. "I got sick yesterday morning. Really sick. Mia wanted to help, so she went to gather firewood. There was thick fog, and..." David's voice broke. "I should never have let her go, alone. Even for a few minutes. Kids get lost, Mr. Chen. It's not your fault. Tell me about Mia. How tall is she? What was she wearing?" 4 feet tall, maybe 65 pounds. Brown hair in pigtails. She was wearing blue jeans, a pink t-shirt, and white sneakers. She has a safety whistle on an orange cord around her neck. Captain Martinez wrote everything down. "What about survival skills? Does she know anything about staying safe in the woods?" "Some. I've been teaching her basic things. How to find water, what berries are safe to eat, bear safety. But she's only 7. David wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "What about the dog? You mentioned a dog in your radio call." "Rusty. He's a golden Labrador, about 70 pounds. He's been with us since Mia was 4. Very gentle, very protective of her." Captain Martinez felt a bit of relief. A dog could help keep a child warm and might even find food and water. That's good. Dogs can be excellent survival partners. More vehicles arrived throughout the morning. Park service trucks, volunteer firefighters, and civilian volunteers who had heard about the missing girl on their emergency scanners. Word spread quickly through the small communities around Olympic National Park. Mrs. Thompson, Mia's 2nd grade teacher, drove up from Port Angeles when she heard the news. "I had to come help," she told Captain Martinez. "Mia is such a special little girl. She loves nature and animals more than any kid I've ever taught." Several parents from Mia's school came too, along with their teenage children who knew the forests well. The search team grew to over 30 people. Captain Martinez organized them into groups. "We'll search in a grid pattern, starting from the campsite and working outward. The first 24 hours are critical for finding lost children." She didn't say what everyone was thinking, that those 24 hours had already passed. The helicopter arrived at noon, its rotors chopping loudly through the forest air. But even from above, the Olympic forest was thick and green. Spotting a small child and a dog through the canopy would be nearly impossible. "Grid Team 1, take the river trail south," Captain Martinez radioed. "Grid Team 2, take the ridge trail north. Team 3, search the area around the old ranger station." Each team had radios, first aid supplies, and emergency food. They called Mia's name as they walked, their voices echoing through the forest. "Mia! Mia Chen! Can you hear us?" "Rusty! Here, boy!" 2 miles away, following a stream that sparkled in the afternoon sun, Mia heard something that made her stop walking. It was faint, but it sounded like people calling her name. "Do you hear that, Rusty?" she asked, tilting her head to listen better. Rusty's ears perked up. He heard it too. But instead of barking or running toward the voices, he whined and looked in the opposite direction. "That's people calling my name. We should go to them." But when Mia started walking toward the voices, Rusty gently grabbed her jacket sleeve with his teeth and pulled her back. "What's wrong, boy? Those are people who can help us." Rusty whined again and looked toward the stream they had been following. Then he looked back at Mia with his intelligent brown eyes, as if trying to tell her something important. The voices were getting fainter now, moving in a different direction. Mia felt tears start in her eyes. People had been looking for her, And now they were going away. Why didn't you let me go to them? She asked Rusty sadly. But Rusty just pressed against her legs and started walking along the stream again, looking back to make sure she was following. Back at the command post, David's mother arrived from Portland. Grandma Chen was 72 years old, but she drove the 3 hours as fast as she dared when David called her. "Any news?" she asked, hugging her son tightly. They found some footprints about a mile from camp, but then they disappeared on rocky ground. And they found this. David held up a small pink hair ribbon. It was caught on a branch near the old logging road. Grandma Chen took the ribbon with shaking hands. She had given it to Mia for her 7th birthday just 2 months ago. "She's smart, David. You taught her well, and she has Rusty with her." "I know, Mom, but she's so little, and the forest is so big." As Sunday afternoon wore on, the search teams found more signs. A small footprint in mud beside a creek, a place where someone had broken branches trying to build a shelter. Even what looked like dog prints near a berry bush. "She's moving, Captain," Martinez told David. "Following water, looking for food. That's exactly what she should be doing." But with each hour that passed, everyone grew more worried. The temperature would drop again that night. And there were other dangers in the Olympic. Wilderness, steep cliffs, fast rivers, and, yes, bears and cougars. "We'll keep searching all night," Captain Martinez promised. "We have floodlights and thermal imaging equipment coming from Seattle." As the sun set on Sunday evening, powerful lights lit up sections of the forest. Search teams with flashlights and headlamps continued calling Mia's name. Far away, safe in their improved shelter beside the stream, Mia saw the distant glow of the searchlights through the trees. "Look, Rusty, those lights are looking for us." She started to get up, but Rusty gently pushed her back down with his nose. He settled beside her, keeping her warm, his eyes fixed on the dark forest around them. "I don't understand," Mia whispered. "Why don't you want me to go to the people who are trying to help us?" Rusty licked her face softly, then rested his head on her shoulder. For reasons she couldn't understand, he seemed to know something she didn't. Something that made him want to keep moving deeper into the forest, away from the searchers and away from help. As the searchlights swept through the distant trees, Captain Martinez made a difficult decision. "We'll expand the search area tomorrow. She's covering more ground than we expected." What none of them knew was that a golden Labrador was leading a 7-year-old girl on a journey that had nothing to do with getting lost, and everything to do with a mission that began 10 years ago, when another search went terribly wrong. Monday morning brought new discoveries that made Mia realize Rusty was much more than just her pet. As they walked along the stream looking for a safe place to rest, Rusty suddenly stopped and began digging with his front paws in what looked like ordinary mud. "What are you doing, boy?" Mia asked, kneeling beside him. Rusty's paws worked quickly, scooping away dirt and old leaves. Soon, clear water began bubbling up from the ground, a natural spring that flowed clean and cold. Mia stared in amazement. "How did you know that was there?" The spring water tasted even better than the stream water. It was ice cold and pure, like it came from deep inside the mountain. Rusty drank first, then stepped back so Mia could fill her water bottle. As they continued walking, Mia noticed more strange things about Rusty's behavior. When she was hungry, he didn't just find berries randomly. He led her straight to specific bushes loaded with ripe huckleberries, as if he knew exactly where they grew. When she was tired, he found perfect resting spots, flat rocks warmed by the sun, or soft moss beds protected from the wind. "It's like you have a map in your head," Mia said, watching Rusty sniff the air and choose their path. "Like you've been here before." But that was impossible. Dad had brought Rusty home when Mia was 4, and they had never been to Olympic National Park before this weekend. Had they? That afternoon, Rusty did something that confused Mia even more. Instead of following the stream forward, he kept looking back the way they had come. He would walk a few steps, then stop and look over his shoulder, whining softly. "Do you want to go back, Rusty?" But there's nothing back there. Just more forest. Rusty sat down and tilted his head, looking at her with those intelligent eyes. Then he stood up and walked back about 20 steps, stopped, and looked at her again. "I don't understand what you're trying to tell me." Finally, Rusty seemed to give up trying to communicate whatever was bothering him. He returned to Mia's side and continued leading her deeper into the forest. That night, Mia had the strangest dream she'd ever experienced. She was walking through a sunny forest with her mother, but not the mother from the few photos she had seen. This mother was young and strong, wearing a dark green uniform with patches and badges. She looked like Dad did when he went to work as a park ranger. In the dream, her mother was training a young golden Labrador who looked exactly like Rusty. "Find," her mother commanded, and the dog would run ahead, nose to the ground, following invisible trails. "Track," she would say, and the dog would lead her to hidden water sources, safe shelter spots, and food. "Good boy, Rusty," Dream Mother said, scratching the dog behind his ears. "You're the best search dog I've ever worked with." Mia woke up confused and sad. The dream had felt so real, but it didn't make sense. Her mother had been a teacher, not a park ranger, and her mother had died in a car accident when Mia was 4. She had never worked with dogs. But as the morning sun filtered through the trees, Mia looked at Rusty sleeping beside her and noticed things she had never seen before. He had a small, pale scar on his left ear, like an old cut that had healed long ago. Another scar ran along his front leg, barely visible under his golden fur. "Where did you get these scars, boy?" she whispered, gently touching the mark on his ear. Rusty woke up and licked her hand, his tail wagging. But Mia kept staring at the scars. They weren't the kind of marks a house pet would get from playing in the yard. They looked older and more serious, like injuries from something dangerous. As they started walking again that morning, following what seemed like another invisible path that only Rusty could see, Mia tried to remember everything Dad had told her about Rusty's past. "He came to us when we needed him most," Dad always said. But when exactly was that? And where had Rusty come from? The more she thought about it, the more questions she had. Why was Rusty so good at finding things in the forest? Why did he seem to know exactly where to go? And why did he keep looking back, as if he was remembering something from long ago? Around noon, they reached the top of a small ridge. Through the trees, Mia could see a wooden building in the distance, old and abandoned, with boards missing from its walls. Rusty's whole body changed when he saw the building. His ears perked up, his tail started wagging faster, and he whined with what sounded like excitement. Then he took off running toward the building, looking back to make sure Mia was following. "Rusty, wait!" Mia called, hurrying after him. The building was an old ranger station, probably abandoned for years. The door hung open on rusty hinges, and moss grew on the roof. But inside, it was dry and surprisingly clean. Rusty ran straight to one corner of the room, sniffing and pawing at the floor as if looking for something. Mia followed him, and that's when she saw the wall of photographs. Dozens of pictures hung in frames, showing park rangers from different years. Some photos were recent, some were much older. Mia walked along the wall, reading the small signs under each picture. Olympic National Park Rangers, 2015, read one sign. Search and Rescue Team, 2010, read another. Then, Mia stopped breathing. Inthe, a frame near the corner, she saw a photograph that made her heart pound. It showed a group of park rangers standing in front of a helicopter. The sign underneath read, Search and Rescue Team, 2013. In the front row, kneeling beside a German shepherd, was a young woman in a ranger uniform. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and a bright smile. She looked exactly like the mother in Mia's dream, but that was impossible. The woman in the photo looked like an older version of Mia herself. With shaking hands, Mia read the small nameplate under the photo. Ranger Elena Chen and canine partner, Chen. That was her last name. That was her father's name. Elena, Mia whispered. That had been her mother's name. Elena Chen. But her mother had been a teacher, not a ranger. Hadn't she? Mia looked closer at the photo. The dog beside the woman wasn't Rusty. It was a German shepherd. But in the background, she could see other rangers with their dogs. And there, almost hidden behind the group, was a golden Labrador who looked exactly like Rusty. Oh my gosh, Mia breathed. She looked around the rest of the station with new eyes. On a desk, she found an old logbook with pages of handwritten entries. Most were routine reports about weather and trail conditions. But as she flipped through the pages, one entry made her stop cold. September 18, 2013. Search and rescue operation in progress. 3 hikers reported missing near Glacier Peak. Rangers Elena Chen and Marcus Rodriguez responding with K9 units, Ranger and Rusty. Weather conditions deteriorating. Mia's hand shook as she read the next entry, dated 2 days later. September 20, 2013. Search operation suspended due to landslide. Rangers Chen and Rodriguez located deceased. K9 units also presumed lost. Memorial service pending. The logbook fell from Mia's hands and hit the floor with a soft thud. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of what she had read. Her mother, Elena Chen, had been a park ranger, not a teacher. She had died in 2013 during a search and rescue operation. She had worked with a dog named Rusty. But if that was true, and if Rusty had died with her mother in 2013, then who was the dog sitting beside her right now? Mia turned to look at Rusty, who was still sniffing around the corner where the photographs hung. As if he felt her staring, he looked up and met her eyes. For a moment, Mia could have sworn she saw something impossible in those familiar brown eyes. Not just intelligence, but recognition, memory, and something that looked almost like sadness. "Rusty," she whispered. "Who are you, really?" Outside the abandoned ranger station, thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming, and Mia was about to discover that some secrets are buried so deep, it takes getting lost to find them. The first drops of rain began to fall, just as Mia was putting the logbook back on the dusty desk. Fat raindrops splattered against the broken windows of the old station, and the wind picked up, making the loose boards creak and groan. "We should stay here until the storm passes," Mia said to Rusty, but her voice sounded strange in the empty building. Everything felt different now that she knew the truth about her mother. Rusty paced near the door, whining softly. He kept looking outside, then back at Mia, as if he wanted to tell her something important, but couldn't find the words. The rain came harder now, drumming on the metal roof like thousands of tiny hammers. Through the broken windows, Mia could see the sky turning dark green, the color that meant a really bad storm was coming. Lightning flashed, lighting up the forest in brief, bright moments. Then came the thunder, so loud it shook the old building. Mia counted the seconds between lightning and thunder like Dad had taught her. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. The storm was getting closer. "I hate thunderstorms," Mia whispered, moving away from the windows. At home, when storms came, she would crawl into bed with Dad, and they would count lightning together until she fell asleep. But Dad wasn't here. Dad was miles away, probably still looking for her. Rusty stopped pacing and came to sit beside her. He pressed his warm body against her legs, just like he always did when she was scared. But now Mia looked at him differently. If the logbook was right, this dog had died 10 years ago trying to save people. "Are you really Rusty?" she asked quietly. "Are you really the same dog who worked with my mom?" Rusty looked up at her with those familiar brown eyes. For just a moment, Mia could have sworn she saw something old and sad in his gaze, like he was remembering things that happened long ago. Another flash of lightning lit up the forest, followed immediately by thunder. The storm was right on top of them now. Rain poured through the holes in the roof, creating puddles on the wooden floor. That's when Mia heard it, a sound that made her blood turn cold. A deep, groaning noise, like a giant wooden door slowly opening. But it wasn't coming from the building. It was coming from outside, from the forest. "What was that?" she whispered. Rusty's ears shot up. He ran to the door and looked out into the storm, his body tense and alert. The groaning sound came again, louder this time, followed by a sharp crack that cut through even the noise of the thunder. Suddenly, Rusty barked, sharp and urgent. He ran back to Mia and grabbed her jacket sleeve with his teeth, pulling her toward the back of the building. "What's wrong, boy? What are you—" The groaning turned into a terrible creaking sound, like the world's biggest tree was slowly falling over, which, Mia realized with horror, was exactly what was happening. Through the rain and wind, she could see a massive Douglas fir tree, one of the giants that had been growing for hundreds of years, swaying dangerously in the storm. Its roots, loosened by all the rain, were pulling free from the soggy earth. The tree was falling directly toward the ranger station. Rusty barked again and pulled harder on Mia's sleeve. This time she didn't hesitate. She ran with him toward the back door of the building just as the giant tree began its final descent. The crash was louder than thunder. The Douglas fir, easily 150 feet tall and weighing tons, smashed through the roof of the ranger station like it was made of cardboard. The whole building shook and groaned. Windows exploded. Boards flew everywhere. If Mia had been standing where she was just moments before, she would have been crushed. They huddled in the doorway at the back of the building as debris settled around them. Part of the roof was completely gone. Rain poured in through the massive hole. The tree trunk, as thick as a car, lay across the floor where Mia had been reading the logbook. "You saved me," Mia breathed, looking at Rusty in amazement. "You knew that tree was going to fall. How did you know?" Rusty whined and nuzzled her hand, but his attention was already elsewhere. He was looking out into the storm, listening to sounds Mia couldn't hear. The rain kept coming, harder than before. Water streamed down the sides of the mountains, turning small creeks into rushing rivers. The wind howled through the broken building, making it feel even colder. "We can't stay here," Mia said, looking at the destroyed ranger station. "It's not safe anymore." But going outside in the storm didn't seem safe either. Lightning flashed constantly now, and the thunder never stopped. Trees swayed dangerously in the wind. Mia could hear other crashes in the distance as more giants fell. Rusty made the decision for her. He walked out into the storm, then stopped and looked back, waiting for her to follow. "Are you crazy? We'll get soaked." But Rusty just stood there, in the pouring rain, water dripping from his golden fur, watching her with those patient brown eyes. Mia took a deep breath and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit her like a cold wall, soaking through her clothes in seconds. The wind pushed against her so hard she could barely walk. Rusty led her away from the ranger station, through the forest where more trees groaned and swayed. Lightning lit their path in quick, bright flashes. Thunder crashed around them like the world was ending. But somehow, Rusty seemed to know exactly where to go. He led her between the most dangerous trees, away from the ones that looked ready to fall. When lightning struck close by, he would stop and wait for the danger to pass before moving on. They walked for what felt like hours through the storm. Mia was soaked and shivering, but she trusted Rusty completely now. He had saved her from the falling tree. He would keep her safe. Finally, just as Mia thought she couldn't walk another step, Rusty led her to a cave in the side of a rocky hill. It wasn't very big, but it was dry and protected from the wind. "How did you know this was here?" Mia asked, as they crawled inside. The cave went back about 10 feet into the hillside. The floor was covered with soft sand and dry leaves. It felt warm compared to the storm outside. Rusty shook the water from his fur and settled beside Mia. She pressed against his warm side, grateful to be out of the rain. Outside, the storm raged on. Lightning flashed, thunder crashed, and rain poured down in sheets. But inside the little cave, Mia felt safe. As she sat there, warming up against Rusty's side, Mia thought about everything that had happened. The photographs in the ranger station, the logbook entries about her mother's death, the way Rusty seemed to know things no ordinary dog could know. "You're not just any dog, are you?" she said quietly. "You really did work with my mom. But how are you here now? How are you still alive?" Rusty turned to look at her, and in the dim light of the cave, Mia saw something in his eyes that made her gasp. For just a moment, they seemed to glow with a soft, golden light, not reflecting lightning, but glowing from within. Then, a new sound cut through the storm. Voices, human voices calling her name, but they were far away and getting farther. "Mia! Mia Chen!" The search teams were out there somewhere, still looking for her even in the dangerous storm. Mia started to get up, ready to run out into the rain and call back to them. But Rusty gently blocked her path with his body. "They're calling my name. They can help us!" But Rusty wouldn't let her pass. He looked at her with those glowing eyes and whined softly, as if trying to tell her something very important. The voices faded away, swallowed by thunder and wind. Mia sank back down in the cave, confused and frustrated. "Why won't you let me go to them? Why do you keep leading me away from help?" Outside, lightning flashed again, and in that brief moment of light, Mia saw something that made her heart stop. On the wall of the cave, scratched into the stone, were words. Old words, carved by hand. Elena Chen, Sept. 2013. "If anyone finds this, tell David I love him." Mia stared at the words, her mind reeling. Her mother had been here, in this exact cave, 10 years ago, during the search that killed her. And somehow, impossibly, Rusty had brought Mia to the same place. The storm continued to rage outside, but Mia barely heard it anymore. She was beginning to understand that this journey wasn't about getting lost at all. It was about finding something that had been lost for 10 years. The question was, What? Tuesday morning dawned clear and cold. The storm had passed during the night, leaving the forest washed clean and sparkling with water drops. But the storm had also changed everything. New streams flowed where none had existed before. Fallen trees blocked old trails, and the whole landscape looked different. Mia woke up in the cave with her hand resting on her mother's carved message. She had traced the letters with her fingers so many times that she could feel them even in the dark. Elena Chen, Sept 2013. If anyone finds this, tell David I love him. Her mom had been here, in this exact spot, scared and alone, just like Mia was now. Rusty was already awake, sitting at the cave entrance and looking out at the forest. His golden fur was still damp from yesterday's storm, but his eyes were alert and focused. He wasn't just watching the forest. He was studying it, like he was reading a map only he could see. You know where we're going, don't you? Mia said softly. You've always known? Rusty turned to look at her, and again she saw that strange intelligence in his brown eyes. Not just dog intelligence, but something deeper. Something that remembered. They left the cave as the sun climbed higher. Rusty immediately started walking up a steep ridge that Mia never could have climbed on her own. But somehow, he found a path through the rocks and fallen logs. His steps were sure and confident, like he had walked this exact route before. The climb was hard work. Mia's legs ached, and her lungs burned in the thin mountain air. Several times she had to stop and rest, but Rusty was patient. He would wait for her to catch her breath, then continue leading her upward. "Where are we going, boy?" she panted as they climbed over a huge fallen log. But Rusty just kept walking, his nose occasionally touching the ground as if following a scent that was 10 years old. The higher they climbed, the more the forest changed. The trees were smaller up here, twisted by wind and weather. Patches of snow still clung to the shaded spots, even though it was September. After 2 hours of climbing, they reached the top of the ridge. Mia expected to see more forest stretching out below them, but instead, she saw something that made her gasp. Hidden behind a screen of small pine trees was a clearing, and in the middle of the clearing stood a simple wooden cross. Mia's heart began to pound as she walked closer. The cross was made from 2 pieces of weathered wood, tied together, with rope that had faded gray in the sun and rain. At the base of the cross, someone had placed a metal plaque. With shaking hands, Mia knelt down and read the words, "Ranger Elena Chen and K9 Rusty, lost in service, September 2013. Greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends?" Below the words, fresh flowers had been placed on the grave. Wild mountain flowers that couldn't have been there for more than a day or two. Mia stared at the memorial, her mind spinning. This was her mother's grave. The real one. Not the cemetery plot back home where Dad took her every year on Mom's birthday. This was where her mother had actually died. And according to the plaque, Rusty had died here too. Mia looked at the dog sitting quietly beside her. "But you're right here," she whispered. "How can you be dead? And right here, at the same time?" Rusty whined softly and walked to the other side of the memorial. He lay down in a patch of soft grass, resting his head on his paws. But his eyes never left Mia's face. "I don't understand any of this," Mia said, sitting cross-legged in front of the cross. "Dad told me Mom died in a car accident. He said she was a teacher. But she was really a park ranger, wasn't she? She died trying to save people, just like these flowers say." The wind blew gently through the clearing, making the pine trees whisper. Mia felt like she was in a sacred place, somewhere special and important. Memories began flooding back. Memories she had forgotten or never understood before. Dad crying when he brought Rusty home. "Rusty will take care of you," he had said, just like he took care of Mom. She remembered her grandmother's strange looks when she played with Rusty. Grandma would sometimes watch the dog with sad eyes, like she was seeing a ghost. She remembered Dad's bedtime stories about Mom. He never talked about her job or how she died. He only talked about how much she loved nature and animals. She had a way of making them trust her, he always said, even wild ones. Now Mia understood. Mom hadn't just loved animals. She had worked with them. She had been a search and rescue ranger with a dog partner named Rusty. "You really did die here, didn't you?" Mia said to Rusty. "You died trying to save Mom, or trying to save the people Mom was looking for." Rusty lifted his head and looked at her with those impossibly intelligent eyes. "But how are you here now? How have you been taking care of me for 3 years if you died 10 years ago?" The wind picked up, rustling the fresh flowers on the grave. And suddenly, Mia understood something that should have been impossible to understand. "You came back," she whispered. "Somehow, you came back to take care of me, because you couldn't save Mom." Rusty's tail thumped once against the ground. "Dad knows, doesn't he? He knows what you really are. That's why he's never told me the truth about Mom. That's why he cries sometimes when he looks at you." Mia reached out and stroked Rusty's golden fur. It felt real and warm and alive. But underneath the warmth, she could sense something else, something that wasn't quite of this world. "Is that why you brought me here? So I could learn the truth about Mom?" But even as she asked the question, Mia knew there was more to it than that. Rusty hadn't just brought her to Mom's grave by accident. He had been leading her here from the very beginning, following some invisible path that only he could see. The fresh flowers at the grave meant someone else had been here recently. Someone who knew where Elena Chen was really buried and came to honor her memory. "Who brings the flowers?" Mia asked. As if in answer to her question, she heard footsteps in the forest below. Someone was climbing the ridge, following the same path she and Rusty had taken. Rusty's ears perked up, but he didn't seem alarmed. Instead, his tail began to wag slowly, like he was expecting an old friend. Through the trees, Mia could see a figure climbing toward them. An old man with gray hair and a familiar uniform. As he got closer, she could see the patches on his jacket. Olympic National Park Service. The man stopped at the edge of the clearing when he saw Mia and Rusty. His weathered face showed surprise, then recognition, then something that looked like wonder. "Mia Chen," he said softly. "I've been looking for you." "Are you with the search team?" Mia asked, standing up. The old ranger shook his head. "No, child. I'm Marcus Rodriguez. I was your mother's partner." Mia's eyes went wide. She looked back at the memorial plaque. Marcus Rodriguez. That was the name from the logbook. The other ranger who had died in the search. But like Rusty, he was standing right here, very much alive. "I don't understand," Mia said. "The logbook said you died too." Marcus smiled sadly. "I almost did. Elena and I got separated in the landslide. She and Rusty were trapped on one side, I was on the other. By the time the rescue teams could get through, Elena was gone. Rusty was lying beside her, badly injured but still breathing. He died in my arms 2 days later." Marcus looked at the dog sitting calmly beside the grave. But this is impossible. That dog died 10 years ago. I buried him myself, right here, next to Elena. Then who is this? Mia asked, gesturing toward Rusty. Marcus stared at the golden Labrador for a long moment. I don't know, he said finally. But I know he's been bringing me here every year on the anniversary, leading me to this spot so I can bring fresh flowers. I always thought I was just following my own memories. But now, he trailed off, looking at Rusty with new understanding. Now I think he's been leading me here for 10 years, waiting for the right time to bring Elena's daughter home. Mia felt tears start in her eyes. Why didn't Dad tell me the truth about Mom? Because it hurt too much, Marcus said gently. Elena was the bravest person I ever knew. She died trying to save a family that was lost in the mountains. David, couldn't bear to tell you that your mother died being a hero. He thought it would be easier if you believed she died in an accident. But it's not easier, Mia said. It's better to know she was brave. It's better to know she died helping people. Marcus nodded. Elena would be proud of you. You're just as brave as she was. Rusty stood up and walked to Mia's side. He looked up at her with those glowing brown eyes, and, for a moment, Mia could swear she heard a voice. Not out loud, but in her heart. My watch is almost over, the voice seemed to say. But not yet. We have one more thing to do. Rusty turned and started walking toward the far side of the clearing, away from the path they had climbed. He stopped and looked back, waiting for Mia to follow. Where is he going now? Marcus asked. Mia wiped her eyes and squared her shoulders. I don't know, but I trust him. He's been taking care of me my whole life, even when I didn't know it. She started to follow Rusty, then stopped and looked back at her mother's grave. I love you, Mom, she whispered. Thank you for sending Rusty to watch over me. The wind rustled through the trees, and for just a moment, Mia could swear she felt a gentle hand touch her shoulder. But when she turned, there was no one there, just Rusty, waiting patiently to lead her on the final part of their journey. With Marcus Rodriguez walking beside them, Mia followed Rusty along what seemed like a random path through the mountain forest. But now she understood that nothing Rusty did was random. Every step had purpose. Every direction had meaning. He's following search and rescue protocols, Marcus said quietly, watching how Rusty moved. Look at how he stops at landmarks, how he checks the wind direction. This is exactly how Elena trained him. Mia watched Rusty more carefully now. He would pause at certain rocks and trees, sniffing them as if greeting old friends. Sometimes, he would sit down and look around, his head tilted like he was listening to sounds only he could hear. He's navigating by memory, Marcus continued, following routes he learned 10 years ago. They walked for over an hour, following what seemed like invisible trails through the thick forest. Sometimes Rusty led them along animal paths that were barely visible. Other times, he took them through areas where there was no path at all, weaving between fallen logs and around boulders. But Marcus was right. There was a pattern to it. Rusty was following specific landmarks: a lightning-struck tree, a stream crossing with flat stepping stones, a pile of rocks that might have been a trail marker years ago. Look, Marcus said, pointing to a faded orange ribbon tied to a tree branch. That's from the original search. Elena and I marked our route with these ribbons. As they walked, they found more signs of the search that had claimed Elena's life. Pieces of equipment caught in tree branches, old campsites with fire rings made from carefully arranged rocks, and everywhere, signs that Rusty knew this place intimately. The strangest thing was how the forest seemed to recognize him. When they encountered a family of deer drinking from a stream, the animals looked up calmly and went back to drinking. A red squirrel chattered at them from a tree branch, but it sounded more like a greeting than a warning. "Animals can sense things we can't," Marcus said when a chipmunk ran right past Rusty without fear. "They know he's not quite like other dogs." Around noon, they came to a place where the forest opened up into a small meadow filled with wildflowers. In the center of the meadow stood a single, massive cedar tree. Its trunk was so big that even 5 people holding hands couldn't circle it. Rusty went straight to the tree and sat down at its base. He looked back at Mia and Marcus, his tail wagging slowly. "Why did he bring us here?" Mia asked. Marcus walked around the giant tree, studying its bark. On the side facing the meadow, he found what he was looking for. Carved into the cedar's thick bark were symbols and letters, some old and weathered, some more recent. "Trail markers," Marcus explained. "Hikers and rangers have been marking this tree for decades. It's a landmark that can be seen from miles away." Mia found her mother's initials carved near the bottom. EC 2013, with an arrow pointing northwest. "She was here," Mia breathed, tracing the letters with her finger. "On her last search. This tree is directly in the path between where the missing hikers were last seen and where Elena was found," Marcus said. "She would have stopped here to mark her route." But Rusty wasn't interested in the old carvings. He was digging at the base of the tree, his paws working quickly to uncover something buried in the soft earth. "What are you looking for, boy?" Mia asked, kneeling beside him. Rusty's digging revealed a small metal box, wrapped in a plastic bag to keep it waterproof. The box was dented and scratched, like it had been buried for a long time. With shaking hands, Marcus opened the box. Inside was a small notebook, a pencil, and a folded piece of paper. The notebook was a trail log where hikers could sign their names and leave messages for other travelers. Marcus flipped through the pages until he found the last entry, dated September 19, 2013. In Elena's careful handwriting, it read, "Third day of search. No sign of the Morrison family yet. Weather getting worse. Rusty, acting strange, keeps wanting to go northwest toward Glacier Creek. Usually trust his instincts, but that area was already searched by Team B. Still, he's never wrong about these things. We'll follow his lead tomorrow if we don't find them today. If something happens to us, tell David I love him and that Mia should be proud of her mother. Ranger Elena Chen." Mia felt tears start in her eyes. Her mother's last words, written the night before she died. Marcus unfolded the piece of paper. It was a hand-drawn map showing the search area with different routes marked in different colors. One route, drawn in red, led northwest toward a place marked Glacier Creek, Danger Zone. "This is where Elena was going," Marcus said quietly. She was following Rusty's instincts, even though it meant going into a dangerous area. "Did they find the Morrison family?" Mia asked. Marcus nodded sadly. 2 days after Elena died. They were exactly where Rusty thought they would be, at Glacier Creek. Elena was right to trust him, but the landslide happened before she could reach them. Mia looked at Rusty, who was sitting quietly beside the cedar tree. "You knew where they were, didn't you? You tried to save them." Rusty whined softly and looked toward the northwest, the same direction Elena's map indicated. "The Morrison family lived because Elena trusted Rusty's instincts," Marcus said. "Even though it cost her life, she saved 3 people." They left the cedar tree and continued following Rusty northwest toward Glacier Creek. The terrain got more difficult as they climbed higher into the mountains. The trees were smaller here, and patches of old snow clung to the shaded areas. As they walked, Marcus told Mia more about her mother's work. Elena was the best search and rescue ranger I ever worked with. She had an instinct for finding lost people that I've never seen before or since, and Rusty was the perfect partner for her. They could communicate without words. "Like we're doing now," Mia said, watching Rusty navigate the difficult terrain with perfect confidence. Exactly like that. They came to a steep ravine carved by centuries of rushing water. Far below, Mia could hear Glacier Creek tumbling over rocks and fallen logs. The sound echoed off the canyon walls like distant thunder. Rusty stopped at the edge of the ravine and looked down. For the first time since their journey began, he seemed uncertain. He whined and paced back and forth like he was trying to decide which way to go. "What's wrong, boy?" Mia asked. Marcus studied the ravine carefully. This is where the landslide happened. The whole side of the mountain came down, changing the landscape completely. Rusty remembers the old trails, but they don't exist anymore. Thais, Dog sat down and looked at Mia with those impossibly intelligent brown eyes. For a moment, she could swear she heard his voice in her mind again. "I can't go any farther. This is where my story ended. But yours is just beginning." "What do you mean?" Mia whispered. Rusty stood up and walked to a flat rock overlooking the ravine. He lay down and rested his head on his paws, as if settling in for a long wait. "I think he wants us to wait here," Marcus said. "But for what?" Or, as if in answer to his question, they heard something that made them all freeze, the distant sound of helicopters approaching from the south. "The search teams," Marcus breathed. "They've found us." But instead of barking or running toward the reedy sound of rescue, Rusty just lay quietly on his rock, watching the sky with calm, patient eyes. Mia realized that this had been his plan all along, not to avoid the searchers, but to lead her to exactly the right place at exactly the right time. The helicopters were getting closer, their rotors echoing off the canyon walls. Soon, the search would be over. But first, Rusty had one more secret to reveal, the most important one of all. Wednesday morning had brought the biggest challenge yet. To reach the searchers below, Mia and Rusty would have to descend a steep cliff face that dropped down into the ravine where Glacier Creek carved its way through the mountains. Marcus studied the rocky slope with worried eyes. "This is dangerous. Mia, maybe we should wait for the rescue teams to find another way up." But Rusty was already moving toward the cliff edge. He looked back at Mia, then at the steep descent, then back at her again. His message was clear. This was the way they had to go. "He knows what he's doing," Mia said, though her heart pounded as she looked down the cliff. "He's brought me this far safely." The cliff wasn't completely vertical, but it was steep enough that one wrong step could send them tumbling hundreds of feet into the rocky creek below. Rusty went first, finding footholds among the rocks and roots that stuck out from the cliff face. "Follow exactly where he steps," Marcus called out as he started down behind them. "Dogs have better balance than we do." Mia's hands shook as she gripped the cold rocks. Her feet slipped on loose stones that clattered down into the canyon. But every time she felt like she might fall, Rusty was there. He would brace himself against the cliff and let her use his strong body as support. Halfway down, disaster struck. Mia reached for what looked like a solid rock, but it crumbled in her hand. She started to slide backward, her feet scrambling for anything to stop her fall. Rusty lunged forward, catching the sleeve of her jacket in his teeth. His paws found a narrow ledge, and he pulled with all his strength to keep her from falling. "I've got you," Marcus called, grabbing Mia's other arm and helping pull her back to safety. But the effort had cost Rusty. As Mia found her footing on the ledge, she saw that the dog was limping. His old injuries, the scars she had noticed days ago, had reopened. Dark spots of blood marked the rocks where he stepped. "Rusty, you're hurt!" Mia cried. The golden Labrador looked at her with those patient brown eyes and continued climbing down, ignoring his pain. But Mia could see he was struggling now. His breathing was heavy, and he moved more slowly than before. "Why is he pushing himself so hard?" she asked Marcus. "I don't know," Marcus replied, watching Rusty with growing concern. "It's like he's running out of time." They continued the dangerous descent, with Mia now helping Rusty as much as he was helping her. When he stumbled, she steadied him. When he seemed confused about which way to go, she found the safest path. The helicopter sounds were much closer now. Through the trees below, Mia could see rescue teams moving along the creek. They were calling her name, their voices echoing up the canyon walls. "Mia! Mia Chen! Can you hear us?" This time, Rusty didn't try to stop her from calling back. Instead, he threw back his head and howled, a long, mournful sound that carried through the valley like a song. The sound of the rescue teams changed immediately. They had heard Rusty's call and were heading in their direction. "That's the sound of a search dog," Marcus said with wonder. Even after all these years, he remembers his training. They reached the bottom of the cliff just as the first rescue team arrived. Captain Sarah Martinez led the group, followed by 4 other searchers and a paramedic. Behind them, looking pale but determined, was Dad. "Mia!" Dad shouted, running toward her. She threw herself into his arms, feeling safe for the first time in 4 days. "Dad, I'm okay. Rusty took care of me." David Chen held his daughter tight, tears streaming down his face. "I was so scared. I thought I'd lost you too." "I know about Mom," Mia said quietly. "I know the truth about how she really died." Dad's face went pale. He looked over Mia's shoulder at Marcus Rodriguez, who nodded grimly. "She found Elena's memorial," Marcus explained, "and Elena's final log entry. She knows everything." "Captain." Martinez was checking Mia for injuries, amazed to find her in such good condition after 4 days alone in the wilderness. "How did you survive out here? How did you find food and water?" "Rusty showed me everything," Mia said, turning to look for her dog. But Rusty was no longer standing beside them. He had walked to the edge of Glacier Creek and was lying down on, a flat rock, his head resting on his paws. His golden fur was matted with blood from his reopened wounds, and his breathing was labored. "Something's wrong with him," the paramedic said, kneeling beside Rusty. "He's in shock. These injuries look old, but they're bleeding like they just happened." Dad knelt beside Rusty and gently stroked his fur. "You did it, boy. You brought her home safe, just like you tried to bring Elena home." Rusty's tail thumped weakly against the rock. His brown eyes found Mia's face and held her gaze. In those eyes, she saw love, pride, and something that looked like relief. "I understand now," Mia whispered, kneeling beside him. "You came back to finish what you started. You couldn't save Mom, but you saved me." Rusty's breathing was growing weaker. The veterinarian in the rescue team examined him quickly. "I don't understand it," she said. "His vitals are failing, but there's no medical reason. It's like his body is just shutting down." Marcus knelt on Rusty's other side. In the old days, some people believed that search dogs had such strong bonds with their handlers that they could come back from the dead to complete unfinished missions. "That's impossible," Captain Martinez said. But she was looking at Rusty with new eyes, remembering all the stories she'd heard about his amazing survival skills. "Is it?" Dad asked quietly. "This dog died 10 years ago, but he's been living with us for 3 years. He's never acted like a normal pet. He's always been different." Mia took Rusty's head in her lap, feeling his warm breath against her hands. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for bringing me to Mom's memorial. Thank you for helping me understand who she really was." Rusty's eyes began to glow with that same soft golden light Mia had seen in the cave. But now the light was getting brighter, spreading from his eyes to his entire body. "Look," Marcus breathed. The rescue team stepped back in amazement. Rusty's golden fur was literally glowing now, as if lit from within by warm sunlight. The light was peaceful and beautiful, not scary at all. In the glow, Mia could see something that made her heart soar. Standing beside Rusty, translucent but clearly visible, was a young woman in a park ranger uniform. Elena Chen looked exactly like she did in the photographs, with dark hair pulled back and kind, intelligent eyes. "Mom?" Mia whispered. Elena smiled and knelt beside her daughter, though her ghostly hand passed through Mia when she tried to touch her face. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You're braver than I ever was. I missed you so much. I know, but I've been watching over you every day. And Rusty has been my eyes and ears, keeping you safe when I couldn't." The golden light around Rusty was getting brighter. His breathing was peaceful now, no longer labored. "It's time," Elena said softly, looking at her faithful partner. "Your mission is complete. You can rest now." Rusty looked at Mia one last time, his tail wagging slowly. Then he rested his head in her lap and closed his eyes. The golden light enveloped him completely, warm and comforting like summer sunshine. When the light faded, Rusty was gone. Not dead, simply gone, as if he had never been there at all. Only his collar remained, lying on the rock where he had been. Elena's ghostly form was fading too, becoming more translucent with each passing moment. "Will I see you again?" Mia asked. "Every time you look in a mirror, you'll see my eyes," Elena said. "Every time you help someone in need, you'll feel my heart. And every time you're brave enough to do what's right, you'll know I'm proud of you. I love you, Mom. I love you too, my brave little ranger. Take care of your dad for me." Elena looked at David, her ghostly eyes full of love. "Thank you for being such a wonderful father to her. She's everything I dreamed she would be." Then Elena Chen, ranger of Olympic National Park, faded into the morning light, finally at peace, knowing her daughter was safe and her faithful partner's long watch was over. The rescue team stood in stunned silence, not sure what they had just witnessed. But they all knew they had seen something impossible and beautiful. A love so strong it could reach across death itself. Mia picked up Rusty's collar, holding it close to her heart. The emergency was over. She was safe, she was found, and she finally knew the truth about her mother's courage. But most importantly, she understood that some love never dies. It just finds new ways to protect the people we care about most. The helicopter ride to the hospital felt like a dream. Mia sat beside Dad, holding Rusty's collar in her lap, while the paramedic checked her blood pressure and temperature. Through the window, she watched the Olympic Mountains grow smaller below them. "She's in remarkable condition," the paramedic told Dad over the noise of the rotors. No injuries, no signs of dehydration or malnutrition. It's incredible that she survived 4 days alone in that wilderness. Dad squeezed Mia's hand. She wasn't alone, he said quietly. Captain Martinez rode with them, filling out her incident report on a tablet. She kept glancing at Mia with amazement. In 15 years of search and rescue, I've never seen anything like this. The way you navigated that terrain, found food and water, built shelter, those are skills most adults don't have. Rusty taught me everything, Mia said simply. Captain. Martinez paused in her typing. She had seen the golden light, had watched a dog simply vanish into thin air. But how do you write that in an official report? The K-9 unit showed exceptional training and protective instincts, she finally typed. It was the truth, even if it wasn't the whole truth. At Olympic Medical Center in Port Angeles, Grandma Chen was waiting in the emergency room. When she saw Mia walk through the doors, she burst into tears. "My brave granddaughter," she sobbed, hugging Mia tight. "I was so scared we'd lost you." "I'm okay, Grandma. Really. Rusty took care of me." Grandma Chen pulled back and looked into Mia's eyes. "Where is Rusty now?" Mia held up the collar. "He went home, back to Mom." Understanding dawned in Grandma's eyes. She had always known there was something special about the dog that appeared after Elena's death. "He completed his mission, didn't he?" Mia nodded, tears starting in her eyes. "He brought me to Mom's real grave. He showed me who she really was." The doctors examined Mia thoroughly, amazed by her good health. Dr. Sarah Kim had expected to treat hypothermia, dehydration, cuts, and bruises. Instead, she found a little girl who was tired, but otherwise perfectly fine. "It's like she had a guardian angel watching over her," Dr. Kim told Dad. "She did," Dad replied, looking at the collar in Mia's hands. That evening, in Mia's hospital room, Dad finally told her the whole story. How Elena had been the most skilled search and rescue ranger in the Pacific Northwest. How she and Rusty had saved dozens of lost hikers over their 5 years working together. How they died trying to save the Morrison family during the worst storm the Olympics had seen in decades. "After the funeral, I couldn't bear to tell you the truth," Dad said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I thought it would be easier if you believed Mom died in an accident. I didn't want you to grow up knowing she chose to risk her life for strangers." "But that's what makes her a hero," Mia said. "That's what makes me proud of her." Dad smiled through his tears. "You're just like her, you know. Brave and stubborn and determined to help others. Tell me about the day Rusty came home." Dad was quiet for a long moment. "It was 2 weeks after the funeral. I was at Elena's memorial, crying and wishing she could see how much you needed her. That's when I heard barking in the forest. Rusty came walking out of the trees, limping and scarred, but alive. But the veterinarians said he had died. They had. I saw his body myself. But there he was, wagging his tail and looking at me like he was asking for a job. The vet who examined him said it was impossible. The scars, the age, everything matched the dog who died with Elena. But medical tests don't measure love or loyalty." Mia understood now why Dad had never wanted to talk about it. How do you explain a miracle to people who don't believe in them? He's been protecting me my whole life, hasn't he? Every single day. He never left your side when you were sick. He always seemed to know when you were sad or scared. And he never aged the way normal dogs do. Over the next few days, as they recovered at home, people came to visit with questions Mia couldn't fully answer. Mrs. Thompson brought homework and wanted to know how Mia had survived in the wilderness. Classmates called with theories about where she had been and what had happened. The local newspaper wanted to interview the miracle girl who survived 4 days alone in Olympic National Park. But Dad politely declined. Some stories were too personal to share with strangers. Marcus Rodriguez came by on Saturday, bringing something special. It was a wooden carving of a golden Labrador, beautifully crafted and perfectly detailed. "I made this for Elena's memorial," he said. "But I think it belongs here now." Mia placed the carving on her dresser, next to Rusty's collar and a photo of her mother in her ranger uniform. A photo Dad had finally brought out of storage. "Will you tell me more stories about Mom and Rusty?" she asked, and Dad did. Over the following weeks and months, he shared memories he had kept locked away for years. Stories about Elena's courage, her kindness to animals, her ability to find lost people when everyone else had given up hope. He told Mia about the time Elena and Rusty found a lost boy during a blizzard, following his tracks for 12 hours through waist-deep snow. About the elderly hiker they rescued from a ravine, working together to lower a rope and guide him to safety. About the family they located after a flash flood, when Rusty led Elena straight to their shelter despite having no scent trail to follow. "Your mother always said Rusty was more than just a search dog," Dad said one evening as they looked through photo albums. "She said he understood the human heart. He could sense when someone was in trouble, even from miles away." Mia traced her finger over a picture of Elena and Rusty standing beside their rescue helicopter. "That's how he knew I was lost, isn't it? Even though he was gone." "I think so. I think Elena's love for you was so strong that it brought him back. Love like that doesn't die, Mia. It just finds new ways to protect the people we care about." At Tournai school, Mia found that her adventure had changed her. She was more confident, more willing to help classmates who were struggling. When Jeremy Martinez fell and scraped his knee at recess, Mia knew exactly how to clean the wound and bandage it. When Sarah Kim got lost during a field trip to Point Defiance Zoo, Mia helped the teachers organize a search pattern. "You're like a little park ranger," Mrs. Thompson said with amazement. And Mia realized that maybe she was. Maybe helping people was in her blood, passed down from a mother she barely remembered but was finally getting to know. On the 1-month anniversary of her rescue, Mia and Dad hiked back to Elena's memorial. The trail was easier now, with Dad showing her the proper routes instead of following a ghostly dog through impossible terrain. They found the memorial exactly as Mia remembered it, except for one thing. Fresh flowers lay at the base of the cross. Mountain wildflowers that someone had picked recently. "Who brought these?" Mia asked. Dad smiled. "Other rangers, probably. People your mother saved. They still come here to honor her memory." Mia placed her own flowers beside the others, roses from their garden at home. "Thank you, Mom," she whispered. "Thank you for sending Rusty to take care of me. Thank you for teaching me to be brave." The wind rustled through the pine trees, sounding almost like a gentle voice saying, "You're welcome." As they walked back down the mountain, Mia realized that her adventure was really just the beginning. She had learned who her mother was, discovered her own courage, and understood that love could transcend even death itself. Someday, she thought, she might become a park ranger like her mother. She might help lost people find their way home, just like Elena had. And maybe, if she was very lucky, she would have a dog partner as loyal and brave as Rusty. But for now, it was enough to know that somewhere in the Olympic Mountains, her mother's spirit was at peace. Elena Chen's final mission was complete. Her daughter was safe, her memory was honored, and her faithful partner could finally rest. Tati, rescue was over, but the love story would continue forever. We'd love to know, where are you listening from today? Drop your location in the comments below. Whether you're tuning in from a bustling city or a quiet countryside, stories like these remind us that love and loyalty know no boundaries. If this story touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more amazing, heartwarming tales that celebrate the incredible bonds between humans and animals. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Stories of kindness, bravery, and unconditional love are meant to be shared. Together, we can spread awareness about the remarkable ways animals touch our lives and remind each other that some connections truly are stronger than anything this world can throw at us. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Until next time, remember to cherish the loyal companions in your life. You never know just how far their love will go to protect you. See you in the next story.